All right, welcome back. Along with Richard and Dominic, we're now joined by Michael Tobman, political consultant and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. And probably happy you're not in Washington right now, given what's going on, right?
I'm very happy, but I have friends and clients and family that are down there, and it's not a lot of fun. And unfortunately, this has become the new normal. And if you keep lowering the bar as to what is acceptable behavior, eventually you wind up with these sorts of temper tantrums as a stand-in for responsible governing.
And my point was, forget how you feel about Obamacare, forget about the sides you take. The idea that the tyranny of the minority can stop everything. And I did the analogy. Imagine you have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and all of a sudden the Democrat House says, you know what? We're going to shut it all down unless you agree to raise taxes on the top 1% by 50% or something. Different channels, different networks, they talk about hauling them away as non-patriotic and try and figure out some end round around it. It's just not a way to run a candy store, not a government. And I guess, in a simple thing, you were going to go to Gettysburg, right?
We were planning on a driving trip to go see Gettysburg. My son is a huge national park fan, and we're probably going to have to push that off because, well, of course, the battlefield is open. You could stroll around. There are no guided tours. Yeah. And look, that's a first world problem. That should be the least of it. But I would say it goes to a more a bigger underlying problem, which is Republicans on the far right reject the legitimacy of Democratic presidents in a way that Democrats never did with Ronald Reagan, and despite all the craziness in international affairs, never did with W, and certainly didn't do with his father, H.W. But whether it's the Clinton administration or now the Obama administration, Republicans on the far right, not saying Republicans, no one at this table, just rejects the underlying legitimacy of Democratic administrations.
Let's talk about electoral implications. And I'm going to bring this closer to home here. I don't think the mayoral race in New York City is really the best example, but we were talking a second ago about in New Jersey, the Senate race. And I can still argue that's more candidate-driven. But county executive race in both Long Island and the county executive race in Westchester. At the end of the day, do you think that there are tea leaves we can read as to how the public feels or doesn't feel about what's going on, and maybe even take it out on Republican incumbents?
Possibly. I would say, and I used to work in Nassau County government, there, the Republican Party, many of whom I work with and I'm very fond of, have a very simple message. When you're a hammer, all you see are nails. It's thank you, Ed Mangano, for not raising our taxes. Yeah. It is just about property taxes, as it is here in Westchester, in a way that New York City residents and voters and taxpayers, I don't think really understand. They're New York Republicans, you know. Even at their most conservative, they pale in comparison to some of the Washington.
But we've seen lines that have come out where, in Westchester, for example, a recent debate, he goes, I'm sorry, you're just Tea Party with a smile. Tea Party has become, if you can get that in any sentence you can, you're going to take that shot.
Well, that's going to work with people who don't know the particular candidate. So if you're Joe Loder, where a lot of people don't know you, and they do a poll and say, are you going to support the Democrat Bill de Blasio or the Republican Joe Loder? Well, I never heard of Joe Loder, and I don't like these Republicans because of what they're doing. So that's when you're going to get hurt by party labels, when people don't know who you are. A lot of people know who Rob Astorino is, and a gentleman, forget his name. Ed Mangano. So people are going to vote based on what they know about the individual. They're not going to hold the party label to them.
But one interesting thing always, and I noticed this, if you're forced to either defend or distance yourself from a label, it's a net negative, regardless of whatever your answer is. And obviously, depending on your district, it's a safer answer one way or the other. But if you have to say you're not something or are with caveats, you're already on defense, even if these guys, fairly or not, should be labeled the same brush. I'm curious how much that'll play out. But I want to ask you a question about New York, and this isn't politics, but it will be on a ballot, and we're talking about casinos. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, he's trying to persuade voters to approve a constitutional amendment to legalize the expansion of non-Indian casino gambling in the state of New York. Now, we're about a month away from the November elections, obviously, when this will appear on the ballot, and I don't have time for it, but if you read the language surrounding it, hysterical. But anyway, interest groups, they're planning to spend millions and millions of bucks to add in advance of the measure to try and sway public opinion. And speaking of public opinion, a recent poll showed support split right down the middle on this thing, go either way. But when asked again, this time with language saying that it will lead to job creation and funding for schools, magically support increased. again, it's funny if you read the language and how it'll be on the ballot. Like if you like a motherhood and apple pie,
Right.
and casinos,
Unicorns and
you want to,
balloons
yeah,
and
exactly.
ponies, right.
Why is the governor so gung-ho on this one? Does he think it will materially translate into jobs?
It's easy.
Oh, it does translate into jobs. At the outset, there are construction jobs and the attendant jobs and the payroll multiplier effect that those jobs have in their communities. These are people who are taking their salaries and not parking in an offshore account.
Depression and
right,
all that other good stuff. Right?
Well, yes. I mean, without discussing the underlying issue of the appropriateness of gaming and government's role there, it does lead to jobs. And people are gambling, and they are going to casinos. They're just not going to New York, not Indian casinos. And generally on a ballot initiative, on a ballot question, you want to start off at 60%.
Yeah.
So the language gets you there and the spending will get you there. And at 60%, it allows you to slip a few points and still have a
Look,
pass.
Governor Cuomo does not like to lose anything he puts forward. Okay, he likes a sure shot, and that's why you see it this way. Okay, he's not going to want this to just pass slightly. He's going to want it to pass, with a very comfortable margin. That's just the way he is. All right, he doesn't put forward anything that he doesn't think is going to pass. As we've seen in the
Dominic,
past,
he's got a
obviously.
busy agenda here. Forget about what happens in November. Our good friend Richard Brodsky for weeks has been talking about what's going to be in the docket for next year. And the cynic in me says I think it has something to do with 2016, but the idea of doing a tax cut
It's not
in
cynic,
New York.
it's true.
Okay.
It's
I know he's going to probably have more than a few angry mayors in cities like Syracuse and Yonkers and the rest saying, what's going on here? Who is this guy? I thought he was a Democratic mayor. What's up with all these unfunded mandates? It's interesting the eye of the needle that this governor's trying to thread here. He'll be big on social liberal policies, right? But when it comes to fiscal things, you close your eyes. He's a Republican governor.
Well, to a degree, that's who Andrew Cuomo is in terms of when it comes to fiscal policies. I will say this much. The tax cut issue, the people that live in the suburbs, which side do you think they come down on this?
Definitely.
They're going to come down on supporting Governor Cuomo. It's a smart move. It'll help him statewide office as well as a possible presidential run. Yeah. I don't think he's too concerned with the Democratic mayors
Michael,
right now.
You talk to the mayors of Yonkers, Syracuse, big cities. They're going to tell you right now, there's no place left to cut. They've gone through them all. And you cut more, now you're talking schools, cops, and other stuff, like we've seen in other states. But unless they're hyping it, they say there'll be draconian impacts if the numbers they're hearing are real. How real do you think these cuts are? How much of it is about potential politics?
Right, it's managing expectations. There's a whisper campaign that it's going to be horrible, and then when it's anything short of truly horrible, it's manna from heaven. It's wonderful. Let's not forget, with a new mayor, probably Bill de Blasio, coming into New York City looking for tax hikes on the wealthiest residents of New York City, and they'll find some. I suspect he gets it. They won't call it a tax. It'll be a temporary surcharge on certain financial transactions.
But he can't get that without the state government, though.
And they will get it. They will want to give this new mayor a clean shot at creating some successes for himself and for Governor Cuomo moving forward in whatever direction he chooses to go.
But it's exactly opposite of what Cuomo wants to do. He wants to cut taxes. I don't think he gives Bill de Blasio the incentive to
But again, the suburbs, Nassau County, Suffolk County, Westchester, Rockland, Orange, Putnam, the state and county portions of every tax dollar on the 100 pennies is what, 30 cents, 40 cents combined? You have community college lines, police lines, sanitation districts, water districts, stuff close to home that people understand what they're spending on. And of course, schools. So in terms of the state portion of every 100 pennies, I think that there's a way to present it that makes sense.
When do you think, through private back channels, whatever else, Hillary at least lets the field know what she wants to do? And by the field, I mean Andrew, Biden, maybe just those two.
I figured she'd call you and you'd do it on the show.
Believe me, I'm trying. But short of me knowing and I don't, what do you think would happen?
With so much going on in Washington and as deeply dysfunctional as it is right now, you sort of can't be talking politics.
Yeah.
You can't be talking anything but what's going on right now. And as we roll into the debt fight, we're just going to have this again.
Well, when she starts fundraising,
Well, they always are. There seems to be.
She hasn't had an active PAC fundraising yet since she was Secretary of State.
So she's got a PAC that she has no involvement in. Yeah. Okay. Totally switching gears. This is what they call on TV an interesting segue, but I'm going to try it. Okay. This next subject, really interesting to me, and that is, What does it mean to be Jewish in America in the 21st century? Does it mean going to the synagogue? Does it mean marrying another person of your same faith? Or is it enough just to be born Jewish? Well, there's a fascinating new study that attempts to define that very question, Jewish identity in 2013. And Rabbi Jamie Alpert, she'll join us to help us explain. Stay with us.